Now, survivors of trafficking, I've found, often express and actualize their desire to help others, both those who have and have not been human trafficked, along with themselves, in a variety of ways. Now, for me, I'm someone who, first of all, likes to share my experience openly with, you guys, my audience, however small it might be, and then also, along with that, fight and stand up for survivors of human trafficking and standing up against two traffickers themselves. But in order to gain a perspective and more of a broader understanding and insight into what happened to me, I've come to realize that it isn't possible to really do this without the help and assistance of others in whatever form that might be. So for this, I'm going to introduce a video by a YouTuber that's, I'm going to back up a little bit here, same Seizure Girl, that's her username on YouTube. It's about her experience of being sex trafficked, and it looks like from what she presented, she's no longer being human trafficked, like, under the direct control of her pimp or anything like that. And so I thought this was a good video to be a companion along with going into some of my new insights, and I wanted to play some of it.
So I didn't choose to be trafficked. And for a long time, I thought the only thing I take from that experience was going to be pain. But over time, I realized that I learned more than just the trauma part of it. I learned about people. I learned a lot about men and women and myself. How we all search for connection, even when we don't know how. I hear this from friends, from guys I used to date, or my partner now that we are together. How OnlyFans is safer than dating. How AI girlfriends never reject you. I've watched men lose themselves to corn because it feels easier than facing real people. And women, we're doing the same thing.
Now, I could not help but wonder from watching this video what it means to take something of value from pain, misery, and abuse. What could someone tell themselves to reassure that the pain and abuse they endured was not by itself helpful in any way, and that the insights and lessons we may have gained from this experience could not have resulted without our own action and will, especially in spite of what others around us might say. Now, when it comes to what I've done with my past wrongs and traumas, I would say that much of my current identity is based on what I have done in response to traumatic things that have happened to me against my control. But I wouldn't say that the person I am now, especially the good parts of myself, would somehow not be what they are right now, in substance and even in some way in form, if these bad things hadn't happened to me. However, I have encountered people in my life who have tried to claim, whether implicitly or explicitly, that certain core insights or components of my personality would not be what they are today if this person or this traumatic event hadn't traumatized me. And I will admit that in points in my life where I've been kind of weak-minded, I found this tactic can be unnervingly effective in persuading me out of entirely disavowing or even partially disavowing what had happened. Now, I typically like to think of myself as someone, not at 21 years old, even though I've experienced things that are quite unique. I feel kind of unqualified to give life experience to others, and this definitely isn't what I'm going to try to do in my video, but I still want to share the advice that I have given to myself to see if it could be of benefit to anyone outside of myself and those directly around me. Now, when it comes to tackling this kind of personal issue, I would say it starts with separating what I do and do not have the ability to influence. And then going off this, I have found that I've come to understand human trafficking as something that happens to someone is something that someone typically cannot, if it happens to you and you are human trafficked, cannot control the fact that you are being human trafficked in an immediate sense. An arduous and lengthy battle, and probably will, to ever be fully free from. I've also learned to accept that we cannot swap out our lives or timelines with someone else's. And that those who talk about what our lives would have been like without some kind of trauma or harm are entertaining a hypothetical possibility that can't exist and will never exist. Especially at the point that this kind of advice might be said to someone. Now, going off this, I have found in my life and witnessing others who might go through this, that the point at which someone might realize that it is essential to fight like hell to get out of this situation as an incredibly profound expression of free will. Now, going along this, after this point in time, and you're going along, let's assume that it's a gradual increase in an awareness of what someone could do to get out of this situation, what resources there are, how and in what ways they are being human trafficked. Because I found a lot of times, you might be aware at a certain point of time, starting at this point in your life, that you now know you're being human trafficked and that you need to get out. Well, I found that a lot of times you might be aware of this, that you know you're being human trafficked, but you might go years into this and you might not realize that something else that is happening to you is human trafficking that you thought wasn't at that first point in time when you came to a more of an awareness of your current situation in life. And also to note this, and then going off of what Caesar Girl was talking about, one thing in her video is that she says that she talks about this pain and this trauma that she endured as something that was inherently that she found benefit from and that she learned from. And I understand that where she's coming from, and that she's trying to assess it in a manner of what happened in a context that takes everything into account with what happened. But I've observed how she describes this. She uses this wording, and I'm not sure why she uses this wording. She words it in such a way where as if she views the direct harm that was done to her and the trauma itself as the thing that resulted in an insight that she gained that was positive. And I disagree with that. And also, I have to note that sex trafficking and labor trafficking are two different kinds of phenomena. Now, in her video, she experienced sex trafficking, and mine is labor trafficking. That's what happened to me. Now, of course, they are both human trafficking, but her experience ties into more of our sexual urges and rapists and pedophiles as well, in a sense of how closely they're linked together. Well, my experience is more about this idea of having no morals into what someone might do to gain a monetary profit out of someone or something, while both fall under this net of this idea of having absolute control over another human being by another human being in a way that creates that human being into something that is an object when it is alive and is having a conscious experience. And thinking about this even further, it makes me wonder, personally, how could any human being, in a sense, take pleasure directly from this concept of or from something wherein there's a person who is enslaved, who is doing something directly against their will, and that it horrifies and unsettles me that in this world that we live in, there are human beings who have brains, who have the ability to take direct pleasure from sex and labor trafficking, as if they are insofar as they're the ones doing the trafficking. Now, one thing is that, a pimp who does this, well, a pimp could very easily, if they wanted to, pick a career with the same amount of money, and even the same amount of money, without the legal and social risks of it, along with the fact that it is deeply wrong to do, and yet it happens anyways. And that is another thing that scares me, is why that there are people with this type of mind. In my opinion, I don't think that there are people who are born with this urge to enslave and rape and traffic. I think that it is a concept that has existed ever presently for a very long time, going back into history from the limited amount I paid attention to in high school to this type of stuff. But that it isn't this idea that some people are just born this way and that some people just like this, that's wrong, in my opinion. Going back to this video itself, I would say that there is it is interesting to see someone talking about their experience of being sex trafficking and having that naturally lead into a conversation about like AI chatbots like ChatGPT and Copilot. And while this might be initially like unintuitive, I think that upon further expression, it is something that could fall naturally from this topic. I think trying to discuss the contents and dynamics of what human trafficking is can't be done without addressing in some way, whether it be, in this case through like talking about AI, what a genuine connection with another human being really is. And what kind of interaction at its core might happen between a sex trafficking victim and a buyer and a pimp, who, with regards to the person being sex trafficked, has no way to escape the situation. Now, and of course, in my opinion, I think the concept of self-determination and free will are inseparable from what it means to be human. And to me, anyone who tries to claim meaning or substance inherently from just this kind of dynamic are searching for something that does not exist at all and will never exist, kind of like with what I had said earlier. And it's this idea about this modern phenomena of men seeking AI relationships, AI girlfriends, men who do this because primarily men, maybe on occasional, primarily men who do this, from what she says, who are seeking connection, who have none from around themselves. Well, as if this is almost a modern phenomena that results in a modern problem, that being this phenomena of modern sex trafficking. Well, I would say that I don't know if the amount numerically, well, let's say not numerically, but proportionally, of how many sex trafficking victims there are to how many there aren't, if that has somehow been affected directly by that specific phenomena, and what it would look like in antiquity, because I'm only 21 years old, so I don't know what that would look like. What I will say is that in effect definitely changes the characteristics and surface level appearance of modern sex trafficking in a very big way. I would say that the most important thing, if this were ever to be eliminated, this thing of human trafficking, the most important thing is absolute awareness and education on what this might look like. That we have this thing of about awareness of how it works and that it is happening, and that it is this thing that is almost not even, it's barely reported on the news, and that it isn't talked about, and that it isn't addressed, and it is seen as this thing that that if people were to acknowledge in a very common and widespread way that it continues to happen in the way that it does in modern times, with modern technology, with modern laws, governments, that it is inherently damaging to someone's kind of self-esteem, attachment to their home country, place of origin, social dynamics, community, and and in order to solve the problem, you have to acknowledge what it is, how prevalent it is today, and what flaws in our current systems enable it. But that in doing that, it is hard to do this for some people, because in doing so, it is almost a damage to the ego and sense of identity to do that. But that in order to solve this problem, that has to be overcome somehow. Well, when I'm recording this outro, Jesus. Recording this outro, it's actually this has been a day after the last part. Man, it's been wild trying to get this video out. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe why, which sounds weird, but it's just kind of been that way with this. So, yeah, it's just been kind of a difficult one to get this one out, but I'm determined to make it happen. So, well, this last bit is about just kind of changing my content, changing my sensitivities to, so I'm someone who, this channel has been about like commentary community, and also been about like green text and even 4chan at times. I used to adore the commentary community, but now I would say I don't know if I feel the same way about them anymore. So for example, like with To Be Honest, which is a podcast that does dull and dark, classless, crazy, and pyrocynical. Well, I used to be a subscriber for that. I've been a subscriber to them on Patreon for years, and I just now got rid of my membership with them. And I there was an episode they released recently where they literally openly joked in the title about elementary age school kids getting shot up. And I guess I'm not against dark humor. I'm a proponent of dark humor, but that crossed the line to me where I was unable to just continue supporting them on Patreon. So I can show you a screenshot here, which is amazing. The first month where I didn't pay for a subscription for them, and I still respect them as creators, and I respect the commentary community, and I still engage with it. But I would say I'm not as I'm beginning to become distanced from them, and I think that my content is going to reflect that, and it's nerve-wracking for me to shift my content around a lot, even with I have such a small audience, but even to shift that around, and I'm nervous to see what the reaction will be. But either way, I see no other way around doing that, and I'm fine with it because I want to fully resemble. I want my channel to resemble how I've changed and grown as a person, whether or not that might, what might happen because of it. And this change comes from a number of things. Like it comes from just witnessing certain things. I witness things on the news. I witness atrocities and horrors. There are those floods in Texas. There are floods and smaller ones around other states. There are these plane crashes, and there are these shootings, and there's so much destruction and pain. A lot of times it involves really, innocent kids and stuff, and it just involves, countless lives being lost for no reason. And I just can no longer, and also in doing so, being someone who really found a sense of passion and meaning in standing up to human traffickers and to what I would consider to be the worst people in the world. My personal taste now is I just don't wants to engage with that type of content. I'm not the type of person who's going around saying that like it should somehow be illegal or not allowed to make a joke about that type of thing. You know, I'm not going to say that they shouldn't be able to make a podcast anymore or should have their Patreon status revoked because they made a joke about that. But it's just my personal choice, and I've found a meaning in exercising that personal decision of what content do I wish to support that is a reflection of my values. You can think about it like, you know, the type of person who goes around, like, let's say, okay, I'm not the most healthy eater. I sometimes eat organic stuff. There's arguments that are given to these types of people, you know, given to the person who shops organic, who shops, you know, things that are like labeled to be not sourced from these terrible farms where animals get abused. Well, the argument oftentimes is that like one person buying organic over non-organic does nothing to the industry. Well, maybe it doesn't in actuality, but it's important to the person themselves because they are the ones exercising, you know, this ability to express their values in whatever way that might be, as small as just buying something from the store. And I guess that's kind of that. And so, you know, who knows what people think of me, but that's just kind of what I've come to at this point.
But I think as Magdalena Bay, we started making music together in college. We were in different states at the time, so we were doing it long distance. But I think we quickly found out that it's the type of music we wanted to make